They say your neighbor is closer to you than your own family. In times of need, it's your neighbor, who will hear your scream before your distant brother gets the message. But that's not always the case, especially not in House 13. House 13 was a massive compound packed with tenants from different walks of life. Students, civil servants, traders. Even one man they suspected was a Yahoo boy. But there was one name that echoed louder than all. Madame Deborah. Madame Deborah was a divorcee with 2 grown daughters. Strong woman, loud voice, powerful presence. She owned a popular restaurant in town, and every single morning, as early as 5:30 a.m., the compound would come alive with the aroma of stew, fried plantain, smoked fish, and freshly made jollof rice. The smell alone could wake the dead. But Madame Deborah wasn't just known for her cooking. She was known for her kindness, or so it seemed. Whenever a new tenant moved in, Madame Deborah was the first to knock at their door. "Good morning, oh. I'm Madame Deborah. I stay just 2 doors away. Welcome." "You're in good hands." She would then hand the new tenant a broom, a strange broom tied with red cloth. "Use this one to sweep your new room before moving your load inside," she'd say with a wide, motherly smile. The tenant would thank her and accept. After sweeping, Madame Deborah would return, not empty-handed, but with a steaming bowl of food. "Take. You must be very hungry. Don't stress yourself cooking this evening. Settle in first. I made this specially for you." The food always tasted amazing, sweet, hot, well-seasoned. The tenant would feel seen, appreciated. "Ah, so kind," they would whisper to themselves. And that, my dear listener, was the beginning. From that moment on, eating Madame Deborah's food became a routine. No one questioned it. It became part of living in House 13. In the morning, people would stop by her kitchen window, drawn by the scent of her cooking. Before work, she'd pack takeaway for them. No gas, no matches, no pepper. Go and meet Madame Deborah became the common solution. Everyone respected her. She gave orders like the landlady, even though she was just another tenant. If a compound meeting was held and Madame Deborah said something, nobody argued. They'd all nod in agreement, even when her ideas made no sense. But the real question is, why was everyone so loyal to her? Was it her food? Her charm? Or something else? Nobody could explain it, but something wasn't right. And very soon, one person in House 13 was going to find out the bitter truth. A truth that would make you think twice the next time. Your neighbor offers you food. House 13? One thing was certain. Only Madame Deborah prospered. If you were doing well before you moved into the compound, it was only a matter of time. As soon as your load landed in that compound, everything would start falling apart. People lost jobs mysteriously. Businesses crumbled without warning. Healthy tenants began falling sick for no reason. Some never recovered, some even died. But through it all, Madame Deborah flourished. Her restaurant boomed. Her daughters were glowing. Her clothes were always new. Her laughter loudest. Her food everywhere. And the more tenants suffered, the more she smiled. People whispered, but no one had proof. One day, tragedy struck again. Another tenant died, a young man who used to be full of life. His sickness came suddenly and took him within weeks. Madame Deborah stood beside the ambulance with a fake tear in her eye. But the moment his body left the compound, she smiled and muttered to herself, "A new blood is coming." New meat. A few weeks later, the empty apartment was rented by a young man named Kings. Tall, quiet, dark-skinned, and always wearing a frown. People who knew him before whispered behind his back, "That guy no dey smile, he's a sadist." But Kings wasn't wicked, he was just wounded. He had lived abroad before, until a trusted friend framed him for fraud. He lost everything and was deported. Since then, he shut everyone out, except his mother, Mrs. Oluchi. Kings came to House 13 with one goal: focus on his barbing salon and rebuild his life. No distractions, no friendships, no neighbors. But Madame Deborah, she never let any new tenant go untouched. As Kings was unpacking that Saturday morning, she marched straight to his apartment with her usual wide smile and a broom, wrapped with a tiny red cloth at the handle. "Young man! Welcome to House 13. My name is Madame Deborah. I brought you this broom. Use it to sweep your apartment first before moving in. I know you don't have any yet." Kings looked at the broom, raised his eyebrows slightly, and took it. "Thanks," and he muttered, not even looking her in the eye. Just as he stepped inside to sweep, his phone rang. It was his mother. Kings!" she shouted the moment he answered. "Drop that thing." Kings froze. "Mummy, what thing?" "Somebody has given you something today, right?" "Yes, nah, one woman brought me broom to sweep the room." "Return it immediately. I just came down from Prayer Mountain now. A prophet gave me a word for you. Do not collect anything from anyone today." "Not even salt!" "That broom is not ordinary." "Kings, I'm your mother, listen to me." Kings sighed. "Mummy, it's just broom now." "You too, they worry." "I'm not joking, oh." "Return that broom and don't touch anything else from anyone today." "Please, my son." He paused, then nodded slowly. "Okay, I won't use it." That afternoon, Kings locked his door and left the compound, but not before gently dropping the broom outside his door. Later that evening, Madame Deborah returned, smiling as always. In her hand was a big stainless bowl of steaming jollof rice, with fried meat sitting proudly on top. She got to King's door, then froze. There it was, her broom. Untouched, rejected, exposed. Her smile vanished. "Where is this boy?" she muttered, knocking on the door. Kings? I brought food." No answer. She knocked again, peeking through the curtain on his window. Still nothing. Slowly she bent down, picked up her broom, and walked away with tight lips and dark eyes, her bowl of jollof rice untouched in her other hand. But from that moment she marked Kings, because for the first time in years, someone had said no to her kindness. And now the real battle had just begun. From that moment, she waited like a lioness for his return. Every evening, she would peep through her window at the sound of footsteps, hoping to see Kings. But each time, it was another tenant, and each time, she would hiss softly in disappointment. 1 week later, Kings finally returned late at night when the compound was quiet and the city breeze was cold. But Madame Deborah wasn't asleep. She was sitting on her balcony, fanning herself and humming a strange melody. The moment she saw Kings walking in with his small travel bag, she jumped up like someone on a mission. "Welcome, my good neighbor." "Welcome, who?" "Ah," she said cheerfully, rushing toward him with a fake smile. Kings paused, looked at her, and immediately felt irritated. "This woman again?" "Yeah," he muttered under his breath. He forced a dry, "Thank you," walked past her without eye contact, and entered his apartment, slamming the door behind him. That night, Madame Deborah knocked on his door with a hot, cold bottle of juice in hand. "Neighbor, please open. I brought something to cool your body. You've had a long journey." Knock, 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 silence. King sat inside, his arms folded, his face set like stone. He didn't make a sound. After 10 long minutes, she gave up and left with the juice, her fake smile now completely gone. From that day, Kings made up his mind. He would have nothing to do with Madame Deborah and her children, not greetings, not favors, nor nothing. The next morning, as he stepped out for work, he heard a loud, familiar voice. "Good morning, O neighbor. Have you woken up?" He turned, only to see Madame Deborah and her first daughter, Sandra, waving enthusiastically at him. King sighed, looked away, and walked off without a word. Sandra frowned, confused. "Mom, he didn't even respond. And you said I should win him over. How do I do that with his attitude?" Madame Deborah forced a smile. "Don't worry, my child, we will get him, slowly. He will come around." But Kings didn't come around. In fact, he became the only person in the compound who stood up to Madame Deborah. In compound meetings, when she gave silly orders, Kings would raise his hand and boldly challenge her. "No, madam, that's not fair." Let everyone be heard. The other neighbors were shocked. Nobody had ever spoken back to her before. Madame Deborah was slowly losing her grip on the compound, and it burned her. She became bitter, angry, restless. She started moving from flat to flat, gossiping. "That Kings, he's a proud boy, rude and ungrateful. Stay away from him." Some tenants obeyed instantly and stopped talking to Kings. Others tried to convince him. Brother Kings, she's just trying to be nice. Try and accept her kindness, nah. She has a good heart. But Kings would shake his head every time. No, that woman and her daughters can't be my friends. Never. The tension in the compound grew thicker by the day, until one sunny afternoon, King's cousin Tony came visiting. A young, energetic guy in his early 20s, light-skinned, chatty, and full of jokes. From that day, everything began to change. Tony was the total opposite of Kings. Jovial, outgoing, loud. In fact, back in his university days, he had won the Parsug president election. Not because he had the best ideas, but because he had the best smile and the loudest laughter. So when Tony came visiting Kings for a one-week stay, the compound that had always been tense suddenly felt lighter. The first person Tony met him in the compound was Helen, Madame Deborah's second daughter. She was 22, curvy, and had a voice like soft music. As she walked past him in tight jeans and a crop top, she smiled politely and said, "Good afternoon, bras. Are you looking for someone?" Tony replied with a grin. "Yes, I came to see my cousin brother. He lives here." They spoke for a little while, and Helen even laughed at his jokes. Tony didn't know he had just planted a seed in the lion's den. Later that evening, when Kings returned from work, they both settled in, catching up like old friends. Tony said with excitement. "You didn't tell me Asaba has fine babes. Oh, I met one today in your compound. Her name is Helen. Bro, that girl fine no be small." Immediately, King's face darkened. His smile disappeared. "What are you talking about? Who did you meet? I hope it's not that woman or her daughters?" he snapped. "Did they give you anything to eat? Or bring into my apartment?" Tony was stunned. "Kings, relax now. Nobody gave me anything. I just spoke with the lady. She greeted me and we chatted for a bit. What's going on?" King sighed deeply. He sat Tony down and poured out everything. The strange sickness in the compound, the jobs people lost, the deaths, and how Madame Deborah was always there, smiling and offering food after each tragedy. He told Tony about Hop the broom, about his mother's warning, and how he had made up his mind to avoid Madame Deborah and her children like plague. "Tony," King said, his voice firm, "if you want to stay here, please avoid those people. I mean it. They are not our friends. I don't want anything from them near this apartment." Tony, though unconvinced, nodded reluctantly. But the very next day, Kings left early for work. Tony, bored and curious, took a stroll around the compound. He passed by Madame Deborah's corner, and the smell hit him hard. Smoky, spicy, perfect jollof rice bubbling in a big aluminum pot. "Good morning, ma," he greeted cheerfully. "Your jollof rice smells too good, ma. Like village party." Madame Deborah smiled, exposing her perfect white teeth. "My son, come and taste it now. You will like it." Tony chuckled nervously. "Oh, no, thank you, ma." Just then, Helen stepped out, her hair tied in a scarf, looking effortlessly beautiful. "Tony, why are you refusing now? Or has your cousin warned you to stay away from us?" She smiled, but her eyes held something else. Tony laughed it off. "Okay, if you insist, let me taste this legendary jollof rice." Within minutes, Madame Deborah served him a chevry large plate with chicken that looked like it had been dipped in honey. Tony ate until he was sweating. He was even given a takeaway pack to carry home. As he walked back to King's flat, Madame Deborah looked at Helen. They smiled. That evening, Kings returned from work starving. As he entered the kitchen, he saw the plate of jollof rice and smiled. "Tony, did you cook? This food looks too good and tempting." Tony paused for a moment, then lied. "I bought it from a small restaurant close by." Dear wonderful viewers, before we dive back into the story, if you're enjoying this story, please show some love, hit that like button, and tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Yes, you. Because every click, every comment, every subscription keeps this story fire burning. Now, let's return to the story. Kings didn't suspect anything. He grabbed a spoon and devoured the food. That night was hell. They both began to feel sharp pains and in their stomachs, sweating, trembling, a strange fire rising inside their bodies. When they finally managed to fall asleep, they were dragged into the same nightmare. In the dream, Atoll, dark woman, with red eyes and long arms, was pounding them. Yes, pounding them like yam inside a giant wooden mortar. Her laughter echoed like thunder. Boom, boom, boom. They screamed in pain, but their voices wouldn't come out. When morning came, and they both woke up drenched in sweat, shaking, neither of them could stand. "Tony," King said in a faint voice, "I had a terrible dream. A woman was pounding me like yam inside a mortar." Tony's eyes widened. "Jesus!" "Me too, Kings! I swear it's the same dream. What's happening to us?" Before they could make sense of anything, King's phone rang. He picked the call with shaky hands. It was his staff from the barbing salon. Oga, your shop is burning! Your shop is on fire!" That was the last thing Kings heard before he collapsed on the floor. Fainted. Tony screamed his lungs out. His voice pierced through the entire compound like a thunderclap. Neighbors rushed into King's apartment and found King's on the floor, lifeless. Without wasting a second, they lifted him and rushed him to the nearest hospital. Tony, barely able to move, managed to call King's mother. "Mrs. Olucci." His voice trembled as he spoke. "Mummy, King's is in the hospital. Please come quickly." Within a few hours, Mrs. Olucci arrived, panic written all over her face. The doctor called her aside and said, "Madam, we've run all possible tests. Medically, there's nothing wrong with your son. But he's not waking up." Olucci's knees buckled. But the horror didn't end there. Suddenly, Tony, who had been sitting, fell to the ground. He couldn't feel his legs. He was rushed into admission immediately. Olucci was confused, broken, and frightened. She reached for her phone and called her elder brother. "Brother, please come, my son." And his cousin. "Something is wrong. They are dying." When her brother arrived and saw the two young men swelling up, bleeding from their nose and mouth, he said, "Olucci, crying will not help now. These boys are under a spiritual attack. Let's take them to a herbalist I know. He's very powerful." But Olucci screamed, "God forbid! I am a Christian. I can't take them to a herbalist." With faith burning in her chest, she picked up her phone and called her pastor. Pastor David. A man known for prayer, a man who had been used by God to set captives free. "Bring them to me," Pastor David said. "God is about to prove himself." When they arrived at the church, Pastor David took one look at Kings and Tony and smiled. "The devil is a liar," he said boldly. But while Deliverance was beginning, back at our house 13-0, Madame Deborah and her daughters were laughing like witches in a coven. "Finally," Madame Deborah said, "he has fallen into our trap." Helen added, "He thought he was smart. As long as you pack into this compound, you belong to us." They laughed, unaware that fire had already been set in the spirit realm. Back in Pastor David's church, a spiritual war had begun. Pastor David began to read powerful psalms and speak in strange tongues. Tony and Kings began to roll on the ground and screaming, "My head, ooh, my neck, my body." Then something terrifying happened. They began to vomit blood, mixed with rice. Yollof rice. The same rice Tony had eaten with joy. Pastor David kept praying. He poured anointing oil on them and declared, "You are free in the name of Jesus." As they drank the anointing oil, their strength returned instantly. Meanwhile, back in the compound, the laughter in Madame Deborah's house turned into madness. They laughed and laughed until they began to tear their clothes off. Madame Deborah suddenly ran out half-naked, screaming at the top of her lungs, "Everybody come, ooh! I want to confess!" Neighbors ran out, shocked to see her in such a state. She shouted, "I am the cause of everything in this compound. The sickness, the deaths, the poverty. It's all me, Madame Deborah. You all ate my food. You drank my water. You think it was for free? Ha ha ha. You paid with your souls." The entire compound fell silent. Shock and terror froze their faces. Then one by one they began to speak. So that explains the strange dreams. No wonder my business collapsed. My son has been sick for months. Everything finally made sense. One angry neighbor ran inside, brought a fuel and matches, ready to set Madame Deborah on fire. But others stopped him. She's already mad. Her punishment has started. They watched as Madame Deborah and her daughters roamed the streets, mad and naked, laughing, weeping, and crawling like animals. That same evening, Pastor David arrived at the compound with kings, Tony and Alucci. He prayed over the compound, anointed every doorstep, and prayed for each neighbor. He revealed how Madame Deborah had been using dark powers to enslave everyone who ate from her pot. Be careful. Be prayerful. Never eat from every hand. Not all food is just food. Weeks later, news spread. Madame Deborah had been hit by a trailer and died instantly. Her children? Nowhere to be found. A family member came, packed out all their belongings, but nobody wanted to live in that apartment again. It remained empty, like a cursed shrine. From that day on, everyone in the compound minded their business. Nobody ate from anybody. No one borrowed salt. But everyone began to prosper, because finally, the black curse had been broken. 10 powerful moral lessons from this story. 1. Be careful what you eat and who you eat from. Not every food is just food. Some meals come with spiritual consequences. The devil doesn't always knock with a horn. Sometimes he comes with a plate of rice. 2. Trust your spiritual discernment. King's mother warned him, and she was right. Sometimes God sends us warnings through dreams, signs, or loved ones. Don't ignore spiritual red flags. 3. Isolation can be a shield. Sometimes staying on your own and avoiding certain associations is not pride. It's protection. Don't let anyone guilt you into opening your door to evil. 4. Wickedness can wear a friendly face. Madame Deborah acted like the nicest neighbor. But beneath the surface, she was the source of everyone's pain. Not all smiles are genuine. Beware of friendly enemies. 5. Evil may thrive for a while, but not forever. Madame Deborah controlled that compound for years. But her end came suddenly and tragically. No matter how long darkness reigns, light will always win. 6. Listen to spiritual authority. It was Pastor David's prayer that broke the curse. Never joke with the power of spiritual covering and prayer. When medicine fails, God never does. 7. Curiosity can lead to destruction. Tony's desire to end just tasting the jollof rice almost destroyed him. Not everything you're curious about is meant for you. A disobedience to wise counsel can be deadly. 8. Confession is powerful, but consequences still follow. Even though Madame Deborah confessed, it didn't stop the consequences. What you sow, you must reap. 9. Unity is strength. When the neighbors came together and shared their experiences, the truth became clearer. Speaking up and standing in unity exposed the darkness they were all suffering in silence. 10. Set boundaries and respect them. After the incident, everyone learned to mind their business and respect others. Peace and progress followed. Healthy boundaries protect your peace.